Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday, and this Feedback Friday, yes, I'm trying to tie two things together, in part to make a more interesting video, like general purpose video, but also to respond to some really good comments this week. You know, The Last of Us 2 and dealing with your inner critic. And the thing happened on The Last of Us 2 this week, and I have been very interested in watching the feedback about Abby Goes Golfing. And spoiler if you care. I mean, this is not a spoiler for gamers, but they finally did the killing off of Joel in The Last of Us, and the reactions were about what you suspect. And they have been doing a ton of management on the production side, like trying to frame the experience for people. And it's kind of manipulative, but I mean, that's PR, right? It is their jobs to try to do that. But the Abby speech in the show ties in to some stuff I got in comments this week about how to handle negative emotions, how to handle that inner critic. Because as much as we say listen to your coach versus listen to your inner critic is there, and sometimes you have to deal with them. And Abby is an example of a character who really can't handle negative emotions. So I'm going to talk about that. We'll do the help support this channel. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. And, you know, I even read an interview this week with Laura Bailey, who originally did the voice of Abby, and said that she still hesitates to put something online because people harassed her for a creative choice that they didn't like. And the idea of harassing a voice actress is so ridiculous, but this is the world we live in. This is the behavior that gets rewarded, right? They're still blaming gamers for the fact that the Rotten Tomatoes score for the TV show got review bombed, right? They're saying that, oh, these are gamers that thought Bella Ramsey wasn't attractive enough. And I've talked to death about how, and I think we still need to talk about it, how the, as I call it, the ugly is not helpful, it's not healthy, it's not effective, and it's a sign of your own profoundly negative self-talk. And the people that do this shit can't sit with negative emotions. The problem is that they become centered in every debate. Most of the people with the Last of Us thing, they're not watching the show. So, okay. People might just be unhappy with the whole thing. Here's why I'm unhappy with the whole thing. And I ran this by the patrons first. So if you want to become a patron, I'm probably going to be doing more of this stuff that this is interesting and I want to talk about it, but the internet is a shit place. So I don't want to talk about it, you know, in a public video. But after I recorded the Thursday video for patrons this week, I thought about it. It's like, no, this is a general concept that is okay. And I really don't care about the review bombing. They've ruined review bombing as a tool. Negative feedback on the internet is now useless because people have abused it. And that's bad, okay? Because it is important to get, you know, indications that something's not working, that you can listen to and recalibrate accordingly. You can't just ignore all negative feedback. That's not healthy. And here's an example using Abby, because In the game, we don't know Abby's motivations when she uses Joel's head as a golf ball. In the show, they make it more obvious because, instead of the game where if the game had not leaked, everybody would have gone into it totally cold and it would have been an incredibly shocking moment, which I'm sorry is abusive storytelling. You are deliberately creating shock and horror in a viewer. And I do think one can go too far with it. And I do think the game did. I think that this is a game that was intending to brutalize people. I have never felt so actively abused by a video game in my life, and I platinum trophied Elden Ring. And there is a creative intent in that. When you try to create a shocking death, you are intending to create negative feelings in players. Now, does that mean you go and harass the voice actress? Fuck no, grow up. Real simple, grow up. The people that did that, and you know what? It's very possible that those were third-party trolls. Or Kiwi farmers, or the vestiges of 4chan, or some shit like that. Or 8chan, or something like that. We don't know. Why do we not know? There was some irregular activity in that whole Last of Us thing, because I got harassed by people who insist I was a gender traitor. But there was some point where I was like, oh, it's 9 a.m. in Siberia. Hello, Russian trolls. And they do that shit just to destabilize. It sounds so stupid, but they do that shit. So it was like, Russian troll farm got to work. Hey, buddies. Hey, Estonia. How you doing? And it's funny, the minute I started saying that, it went away. But that was fucked up. And the mindset of the people who harass Laura Bailey because they don't like Abby, if it's real, I don't know that. The people who are going absolutely fucking bananagrams over Assassin's Creed Shadows and your fucking loss, it's a good game. You know, I can see how Dragon Age the Vilgard may not be to everyone's taste, because it is very, hey, we're very Gen Z in places. Those moments were not to my taste either. I played around them. That game gets stronger as you get in, but yeah, the opening's rough. Don't try to do a Witcher 2 style early game choice. Just don't do it. I didn't like it when The Witcher 2 did it. I think it is bad design, but you know, if you loved it, great. Hey, great. I think it's a bad use of resources to create two different games, and I don't think it's a satisfying choice unless you are exploring the idea of a choice that someone is making with insufficient information that has dire consequences. Unless you are actually exploring that, do not do those early game choices. It just feels to me like whenever somebody does it, and whenever a game does it, that's trying to pad replay value. It's forcing people to play the game twice to get the whole story. And people should want to play your game twice, not feel the need to have to play the game twice. That was a terrible sentence. Not feel like they need to play the game twice. Because the minute something is compulsory, it's not a choice. Right? It feels compulsory. It's not a choice. You want to carrot that second playthrough, like New Game Plus on Elden Ring. You don't want to stick it. You don't want to be coercive regarding it. But Assassin's Creed Shadows is an excellent game. If you don't like the type of game, okay, you know, it can be the greatest cheesecake in the world. If you're lactose intolerant, you're not going to be able to eat it. No game is for everybody. But for what it is a very, very good AAA game. And AAA, by its nature, is a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of play experience. But I'd say Assassin's Creed Shadows manages about 6 inches deep And for a AAA game, that's fucking excellent, right? So the people freaking out about it, all mad, because he's woke, it's this, it doesn't respect the player, all that. All right, you're missing out. Moving on. The attitudes with people who needed to vandalize the Yasuke Wikipedia page, who needed to harass developers, who needed to scream and scream and scream and ugly, ugly, she's ugly, she hates men, they hate men, ugly, ugly, ugly. You are Abby's. You are. Because you can't sit with negative feelings. That raging about a game for months, holy shit, months. That is no different than being so full of rage that you manage to talk 6 of your friends into walking from Seattle to Wyoming to commit brutal premeditated murder because you are sad. But the show made it worse. The show made it worse. And the showrunners have said, oh no, we want to show that she is not logical right now. She is irrational. She was irrational from the entire walk from Seattle to Wyoming. Really? Really? She had no moments of lucidity the entire time. Interesting. All right. So she's psychotic. And that means dangerous. That's not temporary insanity. That's just fucked up and mean. And the show uses time jumps in a really manipulative, stupid way to not really deal with the fact that those are some pretty serious grudges in Ellie and Abby in this story. Ellie is holding a grudge for 5 fucking years. They added a year from the games. 5 fucking years. She's mad at Joel. And punishing him for it. That is abusive behavior. And this was the entire problem with The Last of Us 2, with the TV show. You have taken a character that people loved because she was flawed. But there was a goodness in her. There was a real light in her. And the storytelling is turning her into an actively bad person. This is an appropriate time to use ugly. Ellie has an ugly spirit now. When you are holding those sorts of grudges for years, when you can't find a way, not necessarily to forgive, but find a way to stop actively punishing another person for something that nobody can change anymore, there's something rotten in your soul. Being angry is one thing. Being punitive, the punishment doesn't fit the crime. The show has never really, and the game never really dealt with the reality that at that point, that's not just being angry at Joel in an understandable, reasonable way. That's survivor's guilt. And in the TV show, they've made it worse because there actually is a certified therapist in the community in Wyoming. Now she's terrible. Fucking terrible. Catherine O'Hara is wonderful, though. But Abby's worse. Because Ellie's just being a brat. Abby is psychopathic. And this isn't, she's not okay, she's broken. No, this is psychopathy. This is narcissism, okay? Abby is a bad person. And this is the whole problem with the thesis of The Last of Us 2. I was watching with my husband, and he is not this type of person. He watched that scene, he hadn't seen it before, and he said, Abby needs to be put down. He does not talk that way. That's how profoundly it affected him. He didn't see the original scene where it just came out of nowhere. He saw her make a speech after she shot Joel in the knee, so he couldn't move. And before she was going to beat him to death, she made a speech that culminated in some things are just capital W wrong. Not understanding that what she is doing is capital W wrong. Again, the creators will say, yes, that is the point. But there are different ways to respond to wrongdoing. There are different ways to respond to being wronged. There is also a difference between vengeance and removing a dangerous person from society. And someone who thinks that long, years, 5 years, she planned her very violent, torturous vengeance. That is not somebody who should be walking around in the world. Now, I am anti-death penalty. You know, life in prison is for me. But the way the game goes, spoilers if you haven't played the game, is that the big happy ending in this game is Ellie doesn't at the last minute kill Abby. You know, she doesn't complete the cycle of vengeance because it has to stop somehow. She does kill every single one of Abby's friends that went with it, one of whom was a pregnant woman. So that redemption arc falls flat. And there is an argument that in that world, that's the wrong choice. And if it had been sort of a companion piece to the ending of the original Last of Us, where some people think Joel made the wrong choice because it could have been a cure. No, it wouldn't. The likelihood of success in that surgery was they don't have the equipment. You need years to, okay, you have immunity, but you have to find out why she's immune and then replicate that. And, you know, it may not necessarily be in her brain. What they were doing was unethical. Joel made the right call. You save life at all costs. Abby said her father was unarmed when Joel shot him, but no, he wasn't. He had a scalpel and he was brandishing it. He turned around and he did this to Joel. That's a justified killing. So this is all fucked up. And what it comes down to is that Abby, just like the people who troll and harass and brutalize other people, and I have multiple people doing that to me now. I have someone who keeps sending me nasty grams, basically going, you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit, this is all bad, this is all bad. But if you really want to work this out, let's talk. No, you don't get rewarded for that, bud. No, you don't. Sorry, work on yourself. No. You don't get to punish and brutalize someone into a response you want. If you want someone to talk to you, behave well. Listen to what they want you to do. Do what they have asked. Respect boundaries. Don't continue. Bust boundary. I won't stop until you give me what I want. That is Abby beating Joel to death with a golf club. Continuing to use women as a proxy for your anger at what you believe the intentions of the AAA video game industry are is similar. You keep beating things with a golf club because you can't sit with your negative feelings. And it's wrong. It's capital W wrong. That is such a fucking cliche, but I'm going to use it because it's hilarious. They took out the bigot sandwich. They denied me the bigot sandwich line. They did everything but the bigot sandwich. And then they didn't do the line bigot sandwich. And I was disappointed. I was ready. I was stoked. I had my hot chocolate and I was ready to hear bigot sandwich. And they didn't. They did everything about that scene except the line bigot sandwich. The steak sandwich is right there and there was no bigot sandwich. I'm like, no. People know there's two big things with me with The Last of Us 2. Bigot sandwich and Amir the Rock. So if a rock gets used in something in The Last of Us 2, there's going to be a lot of people out there going, praise Amir! Because at one point there was a glitch in the game and every character in a level who got killed, it was, no, not Amir! Because the game gave characters names so that you would feel bad for killing them, which sort of misses the, well, it's a ham-handed way of pointing out that soldiers are trained to dehumanize targets. That's why they're called targets and not people. But I mean, warfare is ugly. War is bad. And I think one of the big problems of our modern age is we no longer see war in itself as bad enough. War may be a necessary evil, but it's still evil. And soldiers have to participate in that evil because it's their jobs. And we do not have enough compassion for people who are in that position. We can utterly be revolted by the structure of warfare and the rulers, the governments that send soldiers in that way, in a blasé way, when they don't do everything else possible before they go to war. Criticize the Netanyahu government all you want for that. I'm right there with you. But war is bad enough. The fact that people have to jump to genocide, the genocide, as if there's only one happening in the world, that's an indication that you don't realize that war itself is ugly. That's what these people who are doing culture war online don't seem to understand. That's what people who are writing these premium cable shows don't understand. War is ugly. The glamorization of war in movies from the World War II period, like Casablanca and whatnot, the Captain America movie did a really great homage to this. That was propaganda, making it seem glorious and noble and romantic. Casablanca was a propaganda film. War is ugly and smells bad and does damage to the people who have to fight it. So if you are fighting a war, you are being damaged. The minute you can step back from that war, the sooner you do it, the better you will be. The better your psyche will be. The better your soul will be. And this is what The Last of Us has never really dealt with. And watch, now that I've seen this, someone will watch it on behalf of the thin-skinned people that are making these decisions, and they'll go, yes, excellent, I have a brilliant idea. Let's talk about how war itself is bad and harms everybody. You know, the entire idea that The Last of Us 2 was inspired by the whole Gilead Shalit thing, that's just offensive to me. But hey, people are allowed to be wrong and cheesy, right? That's no reason to go to war. My issues with, The Last of Us as a whole thing are not personal. They're creative and they're professional. Having a cross in a synagogue is just a mistake. But I was attacked for that too. I mean, that's how stupid all this stuff is. And at the end of it, at the core of it, there's a scene in The Last of Us 2 that was never, I think this was something that needed to be a bit more lampshaded. Abby's father, her dear sainted pa, right, is asking Abby's opinion as a teenager who is no older. If she's any older than Ellie, she's not much. And Ellie was like 14 or something like that. Asking her about, talking openly about, well, she's a child, but it may be a cure. And Abby says, if it were me, I would want to die. That is not something a 14-year-old of any gender should be contemplating. That is fucked up. That is child abuse, okay? Her father was no fucking saint. Her father was a monster. No, you don't kill children. You do every other test possible. You do blood work. You do whatever scans you can. Your first move is not cut her head off. Because, hey, maybe there's something in the blood-brain barrier. Maybe there is something in her blood that neutralizes it. You don't have one working CRISPR machine? Maybe not. You don't tell me one government around the world anywhere has a working DNA sequencer. You had to kill her to like hardcore old school Dr. Frankenstein or fucking brain? Are you serious? No, he went right there. He went right there. You're supposed to suspend disbelief, but fuck it. Critical thinking is a thing. Abby's dad is a fucking monster. He is a narcissistic psychopath who likes killing people under the structure of being a doctor, and she's inherited it. And those people don't respond to treatment. You lock them up, right? They're not safe. And if you cannot, the thing about narcissistic psychopaths is when they are told no, when something is taken from them, they don't respond with grief because that's weakness, that's vulnerability. They respond with rage because something was taken from them. Everything is instrumentalized. Every person in their life is an extension of themselves. And they are aggrieved. They must reclaim what is theirs or someone has to pay. Now, when you find yourself in that mindset, someone has to pay, you are not going to make good decisions. And I would have preferred that Abby had some sort of coercive control over the people around her because we never really get a satisfying response of why no one that entire way, 5 years went, no, this is premeditated murder. I'm out. This is capital W wrong. They never give appropriate character motivation. They cheat with a time jump. So for the audience, it is still a fresh pain, not 5 years after the fact. That's fucked when someone holds a grudge that long. That's fucked. And that doesn't mean you can't tell a good revenge story. I'm not one of those tropes verses, right? You can. If you are acknowledging that Abby is just a bad person. She's not a broken person. She's not a sad person. She's a bad person. Now, people can change, but you don't see Abby change in that game. You never see her confront the fact that what she did was capital W wrong, because people with these conditions can't. And I think there are too many people, because these culture wars are being led by sociopaths. They're being led by narcissists. And so people are being sold a bill of goods. And right now, I think a lot of people are dealing with a sunk cost fallacy. And it has damaged their self-esteem. They feel ugly. The person they're really calling ugly is themselves. And the reason I go ugly, ugly, ugly is because I want people to see the ugliness of the act. Okay? It is childish. And there's an ugliness in the soul of people who feel the need to describe people who are not of poor character that way. The way someone looks is not about you. The way someone looks, what is beautiful and what is ugly is highly subjective. And when your primary attack, when your central premise is you are sure of a nefarious intent about something that is highly subjective. You know, the theory of the case is not, well, they just find something else attractive. They are attracted to something else than I am, and that's okay. No, the theory is they're making deliberately ugly characters, and that's because they hate men and are attacking us. They're not pandering to us. Well, nobody has to pander to you, one. But also, there's so many assumptions in that. That is irrational. at that point. That is textbook feeling rejected and not being able to handle that rejection because gaming isn't about you anymore. Being unable to handle that rejection and disappointment and, quite frankly, grief. And turning into a fucking monster. You can choose to stop. I had to. When I was diagnosed with PTSD, that's what I realized I had to do. That's why the whole stalker chan is just fucking bizarre. Even if everything she said were true, which it's not, I was ill, and I am not that person anymore. And because I got help, because I faced my demons and exorcised most of them. Of course, now I got somebody who, because he's mad at me, is sending me veiled threats that he thinks he has proof that I'm stalking myself, that Stalker Chan's not real, that it was actually me all the time. That projection, the Dark Knight in IMAX. I didn't intend to wear this shirt for that reason, but there you go. It made sense. Like, that's fucked. The fact that people have to convince themselves of things that are just delusional because they can't sit with their own bad feelings. They can't sit with the fact that they made mistakes and they did bad things. And they can't separate, because if you take bad things and use them as an excuse to do your own bad things, that's when you're a bad person. And there's been a lot of conversations about self-esteem of late because of the contents, the conversations I've been having and the content I've been doing, and the separation between bad thing and bad person. And a lot of people walk around terrified that they are a bad person. And if you're really afraid of that, if that is curbing your behavior, you're probably not. If you are spending a huge amount of time trying to justify your own shit behavior as some sort of revenge, if you are doing your own version of a capital W wrong speech to brutalize someone, to harass them, to demean them, to dehumanize them, to vilify them, you're probably being a bad person. You probably are. Because I see people who I see a lot of goodness in. I had, a lot of conversations this week. And one of them is a client who's asked I not talk about them, so I can't talk about that. And I'm not talking about that person. But I have had to reframe a lot of things. That's the bulk of what I do with peer counseling. And the fact that I do have my own past. I did have my own struggles. I still do. I've been getting a lot of people asking me, seriously, are you okay? And no, things are hard right now. I'm soldiering through, but this is not about that. I'm okay with not being okay. I have multiple chronic conditions. I'm never the standard definition of okay. That's just the reality. But that's why I can be useful to people who also have chronic conditions, who are neurodivergent, whose brains don't work typically, but their brains work just fine, thanks. The traditional methods just don't work because they're not built for your brain. And a lot of anxiety and self-doubt comes with that. And everybody can find faults. Everybody can find things about themselves that they don't like. Do I like that I have multiple chronic illnesses? No. Some days I hate it. Do I like that I have trauma brain and everything that comes with it? The brain fog at times, the having to control the fight response is a constant struggle, and sometimes I fail. And because one of the people currently trying to provoke me watches these videos and is intelligent enough, this is an adversary that is a very, very intelligent man. And he's manipulative. And so he is trying, it's likely that he's trying to provoke my fight response, which is precisely why he's never going to get a direct response from me, because he knows me well enough to do that, and I don't play that game. But that is me being able to recognize I have that. That is me calming my inner Abby. No. We're not going to act like Abby. We're not going to John Wick this shit. We're going to fight smart, not hard, and play the long game. Because it's always the long game. Ultimately, the greatest battle within you is that you have to live with what you do. And if you are behaving in ways that you can't live with, if you have to make excuses, if you can't go, yes, that is what I did, and stop and sit with it for a minute and recognize there are some people that do not like what you do, then if that feels unfair, sit with it. If that makes you angry, sit with it. If that makes you feel grief and despair, sit with that. It's temporary. And tell yourself it's okay to feel those things. Because that's where Abby comes from. An inability to sit with bad shit. She has to go beat a dude to death. Plan it for 5 years. Walk across states. I don't remember if they had horses, but you know what I mean? Like, there's no cars. Like, that's some denial. That is some fucking projection right there. Because she couldn't deal with the loss of her father. People can't deal with loss of friendships. People can't deal with the loss of a gaming franchise they liked. And I say this as somebody who quit Assassin's Creed. I haven't played Valhalla because I was like, liked parts of Origin, but was ultimately left meh. I missed the stealth. I missed the core stealth mechanics. Odyssey was a fun game, but it didn't feel like Assassin's Creed. Vikings, I'm not feeling it. Too white for me. Didn't know about Bassett. Bassam, that's right. I know somebody named Bassett, so I keep calling him Bassett. Bassam. Mirage brought me back. It was great. I had said goodbye to Dragon Age. I still had my Flemeth back there. So, but she was my absolute favorite character. She was a character who gave me hope. She was a character that actually had a positive, strong crone character who took no shit. And they killed her off in an unsatisfying way to me and replaced her with a bunch of evil older women. No, stop making older women. Stop using the mad scientist or wicked stepmother trope all the time. It's overused. Bring back the crone. Bring back the older woman that you must respect. We desperately fucking need that trope back. 'Cause the crone is a reminder that you go up to that woman and call her ugly, she has enough social power or other kinds of power to do something about that. That's why crones turn men into frogs for rudeness. That is what it means. Okay, you have internalized misogyny and you think if a woman isn't beautiful and fertile, she has no worth. You fucked around. You're gonna find out. The crone exists in opposition to that very deeply ingrained cultural misogyny. The same way male bards and more sort of effeminate male characters, the Bishonen, for instance, Epsilon in Pluto is a shining example of a character who is a Bishonen, and he is a pacifist, and he works with children, and he's one of the strongest robots in the world. But he stands in opposition to this idea that men are only have value if they're fighting or fucking. And we need those counterweight tropes in fiction, because otherwise we do continue to perform cultural misogyny. We do continue to perform cultural misandry. We need this variety. This is the kind of diversity that we actually need. And if all we do is reactively rage, we're not doing that. No matter how many speeches you give, no matter how many justifications you give, if you are trying to coerce or manipulate someone, you are doing a bad thing. You are. And you are going to have to live with that. And if you try to outrun it, you're eventually going to get tired, or you're eventually going to trip, and then you're going to have to sit with it. And that's going to be harder. So logically, it's better to just let go now. Start the process of really grieving. Start the process of really moving into the next step of your life. Fighting it only hurts you. And that's wisdom. The whole idea of the crone. They're usually a once beautiful woman who had that, what she thought was power. I mean, that's whole Flemeth. She caught the eye of a powerful man who was abusive. And ironically, that's the reason why women aren't getting married now. So the crone is really important. So she caught the eye, and the bad man drained the beauty out of her. And so she became powerful. And she didn't need to be beautiful anymore. She didn't need the external approval. She didn't need that acceptance and validation, because she has real power now. And she doesn't show it. She lives in a hut in the woods. She lives simply because she doesn't really like people because of her history. And she has real power. And she'll use it if she needs to. And she won't feel bad about it. And it'll be over. And that's fucking goals. Because that's not revenge. That's just getting shit done. That's a choice. Did you kill that man? Yes, I did. Why? Because I wanted to. That is ownership. No capital W wrong speech required. That's where you want to get to. You own your choices. You're willing to accept the consequence of those choices, because the consequence of turning men into frogs is, hey, the villagers aren't going to like you very much. So, okay, I'll live in my hut in the woods. Thanks very much. Be polite when you show up. That is, the crone is a truly self-actualized being. We don't have, I guess the good wizard, the Gandalf or something like that, the guru is sort of the men's equivalent, that monk character who has infinite wisdom. But the monk isn't the same, because there's no loss of the one thing that, the primary thing that gives a man worth in society is not youth and beauty. So it's not the same. There's nothing like the crone. There's nothing that replaces the crone. And because there's really no older woman in The Last of Us is why I think Abby and Ellie are being able to act like brats, because there's no older woman in the community with the authority to go, all of you, cut your motherfucking shit. We desperately need that. We desperately need community leaders with the influence and authority to go, cut your motherfucking shit, because it is bullshit right now. That's what I do in my community. And part of the reason I get harassed is because of that. Because I go, nope, not okay. Well, you can't stop me. Well, actually, in my community, yes, I can. Yes, I can cancel projects. Yes, I can kick people out. Yes, I can harass me for the rest of my fucking life. My decision is not changing. We need that fucking back. Because we need somebody who can give those consequences so people feel like they've paid their debt. There's a ritual for redemption. We don't have those anymore. And so people just walk around with incredibly low self-esteem, wondering if they're a terrible person. And so we all have to do that internally. We all have to go, you have to be your own crone, right? You have to go, okay, yeah, you did fuck up there. So what are you going to do about it? Right? Because there's always something you can do to get untoted. You know, if you apologize or you do some quest or something like that, you can lift the curse. We desperately need that. We desperately need systems that people can feel, okay, if you think you did a bad thing, what can you do about it? How can you make it right? Making it right is powerful, you know? Part of the reason I do what I do is because it's my way of going, I'm going to take the shit that happened to me, the bad shit that happened to me that I did not deserve, and then the bad shit I did, some of which, you know, I could apologize for, some of which I can't because I'm not in contact with the people or they're no longer around. But I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to use what I learned and try to reduce the ugliness in the world instead of just being obsessed with it and thinking it's about me. It's not, you know? Those weird Giga Chad looking dudes that I don't get. I'm like, whoa. I don't like that that's considered the ideal right now, but I don't feel that a masculine ideal that I am not personally attracted to being the thing right now, I don't think that's personally about me. Get the fuck over yourself. Seriously, it's better. Find your hut in the woods. Don't be Abby, right? The only capital W wrongs you have to be obsessed with are your own. You can work towards better, right? You can make change. But you got to be solid in here before you do. You can't do it from a reactive place of vengeance. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.